I'll start the sponsors. Hopefully by then they'll jumping on board, right?
Yep.
Year of Learning, Sue and Ann Gerlich, in memory of Malka Perlman and Philip Mann, and Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Beryl ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Yosef Meir ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Henya Rivka Perel Rosner, bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, in memory of family murdered in the Holocaust, Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Shall share her children and grandchildren in memory of her uncle, founding member of BRS, Dr. Israel Brook, Israel ben Harav Akiva, Marsha Federbush and family, in memory of her husband, Dr. Uriel Paul Federbush, Uriel Pinchas ben Harav Shimon, Sharon and Fred Liska, their family and many friends, in memory of her dear mom, Harriet Friedman, little Bas Yaakov, Leslie and Gail Kaplan, in memory of their parents, Harry and Marjorie Siddell, Irving and Pearl Kaplan, friends of Avi Gitler, Avram Meir ben Shimon, and Martha Gitler, Charna Bas Yeshaya, friends of Toby Paris, Saratova bat Yisrael Dov, friends of Malka Levi, Malka bat Yosef, friends of Joe Wolf, Yosef ben Chaim. Okay. Month of Learning by Carol and Josh Sanborn, in memory of her mother, Yita bat Nachman ben Yamin, Mel and Haran Haller, in memory of his brother, Yaakov ben Avraham, Jill and Perry Meltzer, in memory of his father, David ben Fishel Halevi, and her mother, Bella bas Avraham. Dov Budlander, in memory of his wife, Little bas Yehuda Tzvi. Also a month of learning by Stephanie and Fred Mortman for the refuah shlema of her daughter Mazal bat Sarah Malka. A day of learning plus Torah fund, today being the 21st, by Harriet Brick in memory of her mother Feget Sipora bat Matisyahu, and by Shmuel and Henya Novak in memory of his father Tzvi Yaakov ben Shmuel Mordechai. That is it. And Shemas have an aliyah, crank a rafia, velti yeshir Shema tzliah, koban Yisrael, good gaben shtiyah.
Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, good morning.
Okay, I was telling Steve that they were running a little bit late this morning,
Oh,
Minion, and most of the other guys were there. Okay, so we'll get underway, and hopefully they'll be joining in momentarily. Okay. All right. So we're on 71A. We finished part of the top of the Amud with a discussion about how many immersions and sanctifications the Kohen Gadol went, right? And it said that there were 5 immersions and 10 sanctifications. And then Rabbi Zera raised a question about it, okay? And okay, that maybe they didn't count the acts, right, that were done outside of the sanctuary, namely the ones that were done actually outside the walls of the Beis HaMikdash. And therefore, if you included that, that would also give us the
right count.
right? That would add 2 immersions and 4 sanctifications. So we pick up now with Abaye coming forward with the following. Amar Abaye Amar Kra, V'yatza v'asa et olato, that he went out and performed, right, the burnt offering. So the Gemara says, Mi'yatzi'ah rishona aved aylo va'ayl ha'am. It would appear then that from the first time that he exited, okay, and we're assuming it means he exited the Heichal, through the Olam into the area, that's when he did his goat and the goat for the people. Okay. Now that would seem could imply, right, by his point of view, that it could be connected with the Tamid in the morning. Okay. So if that case, okay, then the fact that he went back inside, right, could only mean something else later. Now, Rava, however, says Amar Kra. But we have another pasuk that says Upashat at Bigdei Habad, that he undressed, he removed the linen garments. She'ein Talmud Lomar. Okay.
Shalavash.
Now, which means he wore those linen garments when
Okay.
he was inside the Heichal and the Kodesh Kadoshim, right? And so therefore, what does that tell us? It doesn't have to tell us, right? Adam poshet ela ma shelovesh. And a person doesn't take off anything unless he was wearing something already, right? Ela ma tamud lomar. So therefore, what does it want to tell us? Asher lavash, that he says he wore, shelavash kvar, that he already wore. Okay. So again, this tells us that he wore certain garments previously. Okay. And therefore, in order, he had to change, okay, garments, that would require another set, at least of one, sanctification, immersion, and again, sanctification. Okay. So at least that would add one more, if not two more. Okay. So that if he changed out of the linen garments, the white linen garments, and then into the gold garments, and did what he had to do. And then, and again, he had to go back in, remember, still to go get the coal pan and the incense spoon, he would have to change again. And so that would mean the second one. So therefore, again, that would still give us 10 sanctifications and 5 immersions. Okay? So we're still dealing with the question of is something out of order here? Okay? Now, Mat Kifla Rabba Bar Shela. So he challenged and he raises it with the following. Ve'ema, de mafsik le b'sa'ir, hane'aseh b'chutz. Maybe the order of the psukim, okay, could be maintained, but that, of course, would give us the necessary number of immersions and sanctifications. But maybe when he had to go outside the Beis Hamikdash to do the burning of the par and the olah there, maybe that interrupted the service. And that's what that pasuk of going out, right? And then did the burnt offering. Maybe that's what it's referring to. Okay. So hold on a second. All right. You got it? Okay. All right. So what happens? Right? Maybe that's the case, he's suggesting. Okay, that he interrupted the service with the white garments, had to change, right? Back and forth. Gold garments. All right. So maybe that's the question. And that's where we get an explanation of the Yetzah V'asa. Okay. Now, Gemara picks up on this and makes a question. V'chol ha'parasha kula ne'emra al haseder. Are you saying that entire section from Vayikra is said exactly in the appropriate order. What we have in those verses, for example, the following in the Pasukim, Ve'et chelev hachatat yaktir hamizbecha, that he burns the fat of the sin offering on the altar. V'hadar, and afterwards it says, Ve'et par hachatat, ve'et se'ir hachatat. Afterwards it said, and the bull of the sin offering, and the goat of the sin offering. Ve'elu anantna, but on the other hand, it says, we've been taught as follows, Haro'eh et kohen gadol kashehu koreh, eino ro'eh par v'sa'ir hanisrafim. One who is observing the Kohen Gadol reading, right? Clearly the Mishnah taught us that it says that those people could not observe, watch the burning of the bull or the burning of the goat. Okay? Va'ilu imurei chatat batar hachi maktir laho, says the Gemara. And then are we going to say afterwards that the portions, right, of the sin offering, okay, are burned afterwards? Okay, that doesn't seem to make sense. Right? It doesn't seem to follow the order. So the Gemara answers, Ema chutz mi pasuk zeh ve'elef, except for that particular verse and what followed afterwards. So the Gemara then is not satisfied and asks again, Umay chazet the mishpat, the mishabashas karai, and why are you saying that the verses are in the mixed order, right? That they got mishubesh, that they got confused in mixed order. Shabesh matnita, change the order of the Mishnah. Instead, rearrange the structure and the order in the Mishnah. Amar Abai, Amar Kra. But Abai says, what about the pasuk? Vaham mishaleh. We see that it says, and the one who brought out. That's how we usually translate it, right? Who sends the goat, v'hasoreh, and the one who burns, ma mishaleh, the same way the one who sends out the me'ikara, okay, that already took place. In other words, it was done earlier. Afsoreh, the me'ikara, maybe the one who burns, also that was done earlier. That would be the case, right? Adraba, says the Gemara, Masoref dahashta, af mishalech dahashta. Maybe that's not the case. Maybe just the opposite. That the same way the one who burns the bull and the goat does it at that point. So maybe it's at that same point that the person sends out the goat, right? And does the other sacrifices. And so the Gemara, however, continues and says, wait a second. It says, V'hamishalea. Okay? That phrase, the me'ikara mashma, that it seems like it had to have been something that already occurred, that it took place earlier. Okay? Rava Amakra. Rava explains it this way. He says, the pasuk says, Ya'amad chai, that the animal, the goat, must remain alive. Ad matai yehi zakuk la'amod chai? Up till what point? Right? Must the animal remain alive? Ad sha'at kapara, until the time, the moment of atonement. Ve'ematai sha'at kapara, and when is the time of atonement? B'sha'at matan damim v'tula. Okay, it's at the time when the blood, okay, of the other goat is sprinkled, right? inside the Kodesh Kadoshim and no further. Okay? And so that could tell us, okay, if that's the moment of presenting the blood and it's no later, okay, that is when the goat, then the Mishtaleach is then sent. So it's not done. The Hagrala is done, but you don't immediately send the goat on one hand and slaughter the other, but rather only after, let's say, the goat for Hashem is slaughtered and the blood caught and sprinkled, then they send out the Mishtaleach, the goat for scapegoat. Okay. Now, since we discussed that, Ate Mishtaleach, let's come back and clarify something about that aspect. Remember, we said that really that also is an atonement aspect, right? Because we said that the crimson, I don't want to say rope, ribbon, whatever, okay, that's been tied around his horns, and one end is tied also by a brock, okay, that has to turn white, okay? So now comes the Gemara to tell us, Ate Mishaleh, the one who brought the goat out to the wilderness, okay, comes back. Right? And remember, we said that the practice was that he had to wait at that last rest stop and the rest of the day and only come back into the city, okay, once it got dark. Mitzao bashuk, okay. Now, this statement in the Gemara may be referring to a time before that was the case, right? When they had earlier tied the crimson thread, the crimson ribbon to the door of the ulam, either outside or inside. So in this case, the Mishtaleah, that person could have come back earlier. And if that's the case, then we can understand that what the Gemara is telling us. Mitzao bashuk, if he happened to meet the Kohen Gadol in the marketplace, right? Omer lo, he says to him, Ishi Kohen Gadol, my master, sir, Kohen Gadol, Asinu shlichutcha, we fulfilled your mission. Matzao beveito. Okay, so the Gemara tells us perhaps later, okay, when he did have to wait, okay, and come back in the evening, where would he go? He would go to the house of the Kohen Gadol, where they were having that Yom Tov. And he would tell him, Omer lo, Mechaye Chayim Asinu Shlichuto. Master of the world, okay, the one who brings back life, we fulfilled his mission. Notice the difference in the language there. Okay. Now, apropos, right, the Mar Rabbi, says Rabbi, Ki mipatre Rabbanan mehadade b'pumpadita. This is just a side comment on Rabbi's part. We understand he's telling, okay, that when the rabbis departed from one another in the city of Pampadita, Amri Hachi, they would take, say goodbye to each other by saying the following, Mechaye Chaim, Yitain Lecha Chaim Arukim, V'tovim U'metukanim. May the one who grants life grant you long life, good life, and a well-established life.
But would this be all the time, Rabbi, or only at a certain time of the year?
I gather that's what in Pampadita, they were much more collegial and they got along better. Okay, so they, when they departed, maybe at the end of the session of the yeshiva, Okay, or maybe at the end of the learning, who knows? Whether it was daily or, quarterly, what depends. But what else would they say? Etalech lifnei Hashem ba'arzot hachayim. Okay, that also I will walk before Hashem in the land of the living. Amar Rav Yehuda, Zeh makom shvakim. Okay, that he says is the statement that people would say, okay, when they're going through the marketplace. Why? Because the marketplace, was such that people were concerned about their livelihood, right?
Seems like it's more about the sustenance, more about the food available.
Well, it could be about food being available, partly, but I think it's also a situation of those who were looking to food, that would be available and within their price range, and for those who work in the market, that they would be able to make their sales that day. Okay, so it's both to the benefit of the consumer and to the benefit of the seller. Okay, right? We can all identify and think about that, having been through COVID and what that impact it must have had on many businesses, restaurants especially, but many other businesses as well. Some could have benefited from it. Who knows? Others certainly were detrimental. It was detrimental for them. Okay. So the pasuk now we said that similar pasuk is cited. Ki or recha yamim v'shnot chayim v'shalom yosifala. For length of days and years of life and peace will be added to you. V'chi yesh shanim shel chayim v'yesh shanim she'inam shel chayim. Is it possible that there are good years and years that are not good? Right? We won't go into philosophy right now, but we understand that too. Okay. Amar Rabbi Elazar, says Rabbi Elazar, Elu shnotav shel adam, hamit hapchot alav me'ra'a letova. Those are the years of a person's life that can be transformed from bad to
It's
good.
good.
Right? Okay. We know the opposite, unfortunately, can happen as well. And another statement, Aleichem Ishim Ekra, right? To you, and Ishim here, it means many men, plural, I will call. Amar Rabbi Berechia says, Elu Talmidei Chachamim. This refers to the sages. Shedomim Lenashim, that they are similar to women. Okay, what's the similarity? Could be two explanations. One could be that the same way women generally stayed in the house, the sages stay in the Beit Midrash and learn. Okay? Or there could be another parallel, the same way, that the sages are not physically active, they're strong. Same way women are not always considered physically strong. Va'osim gvura ka'anashim. But nevertheless, they do outstanding things just like other people. Va'amar Rabbi Berechia, harotzel lenasech yayin al gabe hamizbeah, and one who wants to guarantee the pouring of the wine libation on the altar, Yemalei gronam shel tamidei chachamim yayin. Okay, should fill the mouths, the throats of the sages with wine. Shneamar aleichem ishim ekra. Okay, that I will call to you. Va'amar Rabbi Berechi, in a further drasha, imro'eh adam shetorah poseket mizaro. If a man sees that the study of Torah is just decreasing among his progeny, right? What should he do? Isa bat Talmid Chacham. Okay, he should marry the daughter of a sage. Shene'emar im yazkin ba'aretz shartzu ube'afar yamut giz'o. True, though its root will grow old in the earth, its trunk will die in the ground. In other words, that will help guarantee the production of students that children, progeny, that will be uh, involved in Torah. Mereach mayim yafriach va'asa katsir kimoznata. And Pasuk finishes, and therefore then continues, from the scent of water it will blossom and put forth branches like a plant. In other words, comparing the family to a tree, okay, the roots, all right, will grow from the children's grandfather, and that will help encourage that smell, that pleasant smell of blossoms, that the children will turn into scholars. Okay. Now we go to a new piece from our Mishnah. Okay. V'yom tov haya oseli ohava. And the Kohen Gadol was expected to make a celebration for all of his friends, colleagues, etc. Tanu Rabbanan, says the Braita. Maaseh b'Kohen Gadol echad sheyatzami Beit HaMikdash. There was once an incident where a Kohen Gadol left the Beis HaMikdash. V'havu azlei kuli alma batre. And all of the people followed him. Kivan dechazayunhu l'shmaya ba'avtalyo. But when they saw that who joined the procession were the two heads of the base of the Sanhedrin, Shmaya ba'avtalyo, shavkuhu l'didei, va'azli b'tar Shmaya ba'avtalyo. They sort of moved away from following him to following after the two of them. Now, what happens? Lasso, atu Shmaya v'avtalyon, la'if turei minei de Kohen Gadol. At some point, Shmaya and Avtalyon had to separate and leave the Kohen Gadol. Right? Of course, what was happening? The crowd was going to be following them. Amar Lehen, so the Kohen Gadol was not happy with that and made a wisecrack. Yetun b'nei amamim l'shlam. Okay, namely, may it be that the those who were born from nations, in other words, Gentile nations, go in peace. In other words, it was a dig at the fact that both Shmaya and Avtalyon, their families had originally been Gentiles, and they, and along the line, had somehow, at some point, converted. Amarule, and they responded to him, Yetun b'nei amamim l'shlom. Okay, may the descendants of the nations come in peace. The Avdin uvda de Aharon, v'lo yete bar Aharon l'shlom. The la avid uvda de Aharon. Okay, but they added to his insults, so to speak, right? Namely, right, that the one who performs the Avdin uvda de Aharon, the one who performs the worship, the act of Aaron, v'lo yete bar Aharon l'shlam, that one will not go in peace, de la aved uvda adahu, because he did not do the kind of acts that Aaron traditionally was associated doing. Remember, Pirkei Avot says, Ohev shalom, rodef shalom, ohev et habriot v'karvan l'Torah, when it referred to Aharon. Okay? All right. We now finish that piece of the Gemara, and we go to a new Mishnah. Right? Our new Mishnah is now going to tell us some more of what goes on. This time we're dealing with the ceremonial robes, if you want to call it that, the garments, right, that the Kohen Gadol wears. Remember, we've seen that it's referred to 4 garments commonly worn by Kohen Gadol, and it would appear other Kohanim. Okay, all right, and then more garments for the Kohen Gadol were related to the gold garments. So let's Kohen Gadol mishamesh b'shmona kelim. A Kohen Gadol serves, right, in 8 garments. V'hadyat ba'arba'ah. And a common Kohen serves in 4. What are they? B'ketonet, let's call it a tunic, u'mechnasayim, and we'll call it pants, but it was not pants as we think of pants going down to the ankle. Okay, it just went at least perhaps above the knee, so certainly, or maybe just below underneath the knee, right? Umitznefet, and he wore some sort of a, I'm going to call it a mitre, a helmet, a top, okay? Va'avnet, and a kind of belt. Mosif alav Kohen Gadol, and to this was added for the Kohen Gadol the following 4 items: Choshen, the breastplate; Ve'ephod, the ephod in the front of the breastplate; V'tzitz, and the piece across the front plate, the top, right? So that's, I'm sorry, Ume'il. The me'il was the robe, the tzitz, and the tzitz was the 4th. That's the front piece where Hashem's name was written on it, worn approximately on his forehead, right? Ve'ein nishalin ela lamelech. Okay. But the point here, right, is just an add-on, right? Ve'elu nishalin, right? Ve'elu nishalin v'orin v'tumim. And these are the situations where the Urim and Tumim could be consulted, right? Ve'ein nishalin ela lamelech, and no question is asked of Urim and Tumim except if it's done by a king, ula'av beit din, or the head of the court, right? Ulami shehatzibur tzarich, or someone in authority for the community. Now, Gemara is going to first deal with the garments. Right? Tanu Rabbanan says a breita. The varim shene'amar bahen sheish. Right? We have psukim that use the word sheish when it says that the 4 garments are made from. Chutan kaful shisha. Their threads are wound 6 times. Okay? Mashazar, another pasuk. Shmona, their threads are wound, spun 8 times. Me'il, when we're talking about the robe. Shneimasa, that is spun 12 times. Parochet, when we talk about the curtain, right? Esrim va'arba'ah, 24 times. Now, Choshen ve'ephod, when we come back then to deal with the breastplate and the ephod, Esrim ushmona, that's done 28 times. Chutan kaful shisha minala, asks the Gemara, that the threads are spun 6 times. How do we know this? The Amar Kra, because the pasuk says, "V'yasu et haketonet sheish vet hamitznefet sheish vet pa'arei hamigbaot sheish vet mechnesei habad sheish mashuzar." Okay, so look how many times we have the word sheish. 1, 2, 3, right? 4, right? Is that the case? Ketonet sheish is 1, mitznefet sheish is 2, parei migbaot sheish is 3, mechnesei abad is sheish 4, and then in addition we have the word mashazah. So says Chamisha Kra'ei Ketiv. In other words, including the word mashazar, which is supposedly the same as shesh, there are 5 times that it's written. Okay? The gufe, 5 times the phrase is written. The kitatavna nihav. That's where it's spelled out. 4 times shesh, and the other time mashazar. Right? The chad sheyehechutan kaful shisha. And one time the mashazar also tells us that the threads have to be spun, right? 6 times. The chad shehiyu shazurim. And one that they should be made of, right, linen. The chad l'sha'ar begadim shalo ne'amar bahem shesh. The chad la'akeh. Okay, then one that the other garments also need to be spun 6-fold, and one that it tells us that if it's not done appropriately, that is renders the garment no longer valid, appropriate, indispensable. Okay. Now let's go on. Mai mashma dahai shesh kitanahu. Okay, how do we know that this term shesh refers to a linen garment? Amar Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Chanina. He says as follows: the Amar Kla, because we have a pasuk that says bad. Okay, using that phrase, davar ha'oleh min hakarka bad bad. That implies something that grows out of the ground, one stalk at a time. Ve'ema amru. Maybe I might say it's talking about a different item, right? Okay, how do I know? Maybe it's talking about cotton, for example. Amra iftsule miftzula. With cotton, we see that it grows differently. It grows together. Right? Kitana, the flax, nami iftsule maftzula. Doesn't that also grow together? Kitana agav lakute mefatze. The flax, okay, when it grows, it's beaten, and therefore that's how it's separated. Okay, that's what occurs. Right? Now, Ravina Amar Mehacha. Ravina suggests the following: Pa'arei fishtim yihiyu al rosham, u'mechnasei pishtim yihiyu al matneim. That we have a pasuk that says clearly that linen miters are on their head, okay, and linen trousers on their loins, on their hips. Amarle Ravashi, says Ravashi, ha mekami da'ate yechezkel man amara. Okay, but that pasuk that Ravina cited comes from the book of Ezekiel. So before Ezekiel, how did you know? Okay, who said it? Ulata'amich. And according to that line of reasoning, Hada Amar Rav Chisda, that which Rav Chisda says, Davar zeh mitorat Moshe Rabbeinu lo lamadnu, midivrei Yechezkel ben Buzi lamadnu. We didn't learn it especially from Moshe's Torah, but we learned it instead from Yechezkel. Namely, Kol ben Nechar Erel, Lev Erel Basar, Lo Yavo El Mikdashu. Okay, that we also learn from Yechezkel that no foreigner uncircumcised of heart or flesh enters the sanctuary. Ha Mekame Da'ate Yechezkel Man Amara. If that's the case, who before Yechezkel said that? Ela Gemara Gemire La. But rather we learned it as part of the Masorah, right? Va'ata Yechezkel, va'asmecha akra. And came Yechezkel, and he identified it, established it with a pasuk. Hachanami Gemara Gemira La, va'ata Yechezkel, va'asmecha akra. Along came Yechezkel also, and in this case as well, having learned it from tradition, he associated it with a pasuk. Now, let's go on. Mashazar, says the Gemara, right? That he said that it is braided, twined, shmona. Minellen, how do we know it has to be 8? Dichtiv, v'yasu al shurei ha'me'il, rimonei techel, va'argama. Namely, the pasuk tells us that on the hem, right, of the Kohen garment, what was there, right? Rimonei techelet va'argama. There were pomegranates that were of a blue, sky blue, and pink, okay, or purple. V'tolat shani mashzah, and also scarlet, all right, and they were mashzah, they were entwined. Vayalif mashzah miparochet, and we can learn the idea of being twined from the curtain, namely malahalim esrim ba'arba, the same way that was 24. Afkan esrim ba'arba'a, the havikol chad v'chad tamre, namely that also together, if they had to be blue, okay, and purple and crimson, let's say, or scarlet, 3 into 24 is 8, right? That's the case. V'nelef mechoshen v'efed. Maybe we should learn it from instead from the choshen and ephod, right? The breastplate and the ephod. Umala halen esrim u'shmona, afkan esrim u'shmona. The same way that should be 20, those were 28. So maybe these also need to be 28. Danin, says the Gemara, Danin davar shalom ne'amar bo zahav, midavar shalom ne'amar bo zahav. We learn something that does not include gold threads from something else that doesn't include gold threads. La'afuke choshen ve'ephod, to exclude the breastplate and the ephod. Shenamar bahen zahav, because included with them is a reference to gold thread. Adraba, maybe the opposite is true. Danin beged mi beged. Maybe we should learn from one kind of garment to another garment. La'afuke parochet, and exclude the curtain, the ohelhu, because that is not a beged, that it belongs to the ohel, that belongs to the Beis HaMikdash. Ela, rather, danin ma'avnet. So the Gemara says, well, perhaps instead we should use the avnet, the belt, as the example. V'danin beged davar shalom ne'amar bo zahav, and we can learn then from an item that does not include gold, mi beged v'davar shalom ne'amar bo zahav, from another garment in which it's not referred to gold. Ve'en danin davar she'en bo zahav, mi davar she'yesh bo zahav, and we don't then learn something that includes gold, that doesn't include gold, from something that does include gold. Now, Rav Mari suggests another different explanation. Okay, for how many strands then the pomegranates had? Ta'asenu, it says you shall make it. K'tiv ta'asenu lazeh v'lo la'acher. Okay, that to make it means those referring to the breastplate or the ephod, that's unique, and therefore they have 28, okay, and nothing else can have 28. And that's why the pomegranates could only have 24, from which we learn from the Ketub. Now, Rav Ashi suggests the following. Amar Rav Ashi Amar, va'asita, and you shall make it, right? Namely, it says that regarding the pomegranates that we said were of 3 shades, blue, purple, and the crimson scarlet, right? Namely, sheyu kol asiot shavot, vehechi na'avi, that they should make all of them equal. And how shall this be done? Na'avid plata da asara asara. Maybe we should make each of those items 10. Hayu lahot platim, but then we would get a result of 30. Na'avid tray to tisha v'tisha, okay, v'chad da asara. Well, maybe then we should make 2 of them 9 and 1 of them 10. Amakra va'asita. But the pasuk says, and you shall make it, implying shehiyu kol asiotav shavot, that each one of them should be equal, be the same. So maybe the Gemara says, let's take a different example. Let's take the me'il, the robe. Me'il shnei masar minalam. Okay, the robe, how do we know it was 12 strands braided, woven? Dechtiv v'asita et me'il ha'ephod. There it says, you shall make the robe of the ephod. And we'll go over just a little bit. Right? Kalil tchelet, you make it totally of sky blue. V'yalef tchelet miparochet. And we learned that color from the parochet, from the curtain. Malahalan shisha, afkan shisha. So since there it's 6, so here too, it has to be 6. Right? Okay, and so the Gemara is just going to continue and present further discussion on that, which we'll pick up on tomorrow. Okay, where we talk about trying to come back again between the pomegranates and other, how many strands that has with other things as well. Okay, so we'll stop there for today, and hope everybody to stay well and take care. All right?
All the best.